So the dust is settling a little bit after the bombshell budget yesterday unleashed by Rachel from Accounts, aka Rachel Reeves, aka the Chancellor of the Exchequer, being lauded as possibly the worst chancellor in history. Very, very few people would disagree with that right now. I want to focus in on something that's affecting everybody that's listening to this today. Whether you agree with us or disagree with us is neither here nor there. This is going to affect you because it has to do with energy. It has to do with the future of energy. And if you've been unfortunate enough to buy yourself an EV or a hybrid, believing the lies that the government peddled for many a year that it would be a tax break and it would be for your best interest, there's a lot of people hurting on that one this morning as the truth is dawning upon them. They're being singled out. To talk about this today, I'm joined again after what seems to be an absolute an eternity, an ice age ago. I was speaking with this chap, Ben Pyle. Ben is someone whose opinion I respect very much on this subject. He is an independent writer. He is a broadcaster and he is a net zero skeptic. So welcome back, Ben Pyle. How are you?
I'm very well. Thanks for having me back, Rick. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm glad I'm driving around in an old diesel car, I'll tell you that. And I'm glad that it's holding up well. And my road tax that I pay on it, which I believe will be fixed forever, is £20 a year. Yes, £20 a year. It's a 10-year-old efficient. No, it's not a classic. It's called an efficient dynamics car. But when they released it, they said that the tax would never go up on it. So my tax is frozen for as long as I have it at 20 quid a year, which I'm very, very happy with. And when I go and put the diesel in the pump, at the pump, I know I'm going to get about 600 odd miles out of it. It's a diesel because it does about 80 miles to the gallon. So anyway, I'm not here to gloat. I'm not here to boast. No, I'm not here to rub salt in anyone's wounds today. But let's have a look and see what's been said as a result of this budget yesterday. I want to actually start off with a friend of yours. He goes by the name of Ed Miliband. So Ed came out yesterday. Oh, yeah, I know you guys love each other to bits. I want to look at what Ed Miliband is saying in relation to net zero and climate, given that it seems to be the wheels are coming off this vehicle, no pun intended, very, very quickly, especially with what we've seen happening at the COP30 in Brazil over the last few weeks. But let's have a quick look at Ed Miliband's statement on the budget yesterday, and we'll have a breakdown. You can give me a breakdown of what you think about that one. So let's hear from Crazy Ed. Yes, it's brace yourselves, folks. Here he comes.
The big thing you need to know about this budget is that we're taking decisive action on energy bills, taking £150 of costs off bills, because we know that the cost of living crisis is the biggest issue facing families, and we're determined to do what we can, supporting our long-term mission for homegrown clean power to lower bills for good. This is a budget that tackles the affordability crisis facing our country.
Wow, it's not very long, that little clip.
Do you think he looks plastic? He looks like an AI.
He does. I don't know what it is, but I saw him talking the other day, and he's always been a bit mad and a bit woo, okay? But when he was talking the other day, he looks very drawn, okay? His eyes are even more buggish than normal. And his hair isn't just so perfectly styled as it normally is. Maybe it's stress manifesting itself in him. Maybe it's lies. Maybe his conscience is 100% gone at this stage. But in terms of what he just said there, okay, I've just jotted down very briefly 3 little bullet points. Number 1 was decisive action on energy bills. They want to take decisive action in energy bills. He talks about 150 quid coming off an energy bill, which is absolutely nothing these days, although it's better than nothing. But is there a catch in that? And he also talks about homegrown energy. Surely you grow plants and you grow trees and you can plant wildflowers. How do you grow energy? Can you explain that to me?
Well, you suppose you could grow the wood and then you could burn the wood. That would be homegrown. It's kind of a silly thing. He wants, it's like kind of a Tom and Barbara, you know, The Good Life, autarky, he means windmills and solar panels, of course, but he forgets to mention that we get them from China.
Yeah.
Even if they've got made in Britain, flags on the side, most of the bits are produced in the East. And so it's this huge light. And then, of course, in order to prop the renewables up, we have to use gas, whether, and that's going to be imported, probably mainly from Norway, but also from such friendly regimes as Qatar. So it's this nonsense that it sounds really good, but it's impenetrable. And it doesn't stand up to any scrutiny. It's like a mantra for them. And you see a lot of articles that when we started talking, Rick, a few years ago, there was no criticism in the mainstream of this stuff. Now there is quite a healthy amount. We set the ball, well, not just you and I, but we were part of the people that did. And now if you every single critical piece that's anywhere in the news media, will have a statement from Ed Miliband's department, and it's just the same mantra: clean power 2030, homegrown energy. It's just slogans, and this is really a government of slogans. And you listen to Keir Starmer or Rachel from Accounts or Ed Miliband, and they've just got these stock phrases. They're robots. They're the Stepford government.
Yeah.
And they've got no real, and it's not even ChatGPT level of dialogue. They just have these strings of text that they use whenever they're confronted, and that's turning into policies now. That's this promise to reduce bills, which was the Labour Party manifesto.
Yeah.
Has been sort of hanging around. Is it a millstone around his neck?
Yeah.
Is that the expression?
Millstone around his
it's
neck.
been a year and a half nearly, and he's he's been confronted by that, and he can't sustain that line anymore. Lower bills. So they've dropped it from a lot of the stuff that's coming out of the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero, all of their statements. So it's sort of a kicked her off further into the distance. It's now into the 2030s that we're going to get lower bills.
Yeah.
So this £150 concession, he says he's going to reduce the bills by. That's not by doing anything like scrapping subsidies. The subsidies are going to continue. That's just going to be moved from your energy bill to your tax bill. It might be that you're in a fortunate position that you don't pay tax, which is actually not a great position to be in.
No,
because everything else is expensive. And if you are paying it, that means on average your bill has gone up by more than £150, because you're not only going to you've got to pay for your own £150. You've got to pay other people's.
Are they relying on ignorance? Are they relying on ignorance, Ben? Because yesterday we were told that this would be a budget for all, and that it would be fair, and they wouldn't be raising tax here, and they wouldn't be doing this. But the reality was, yesterday as a whole, the budget was an attack on people that were working, people that were saving to pay for additional welfare benefits, for example, and the like of Miliband, where he fits into this equation, is he's coming out with this statement that you're going to save 150 quid. Like I said, it's better than a poke in the eye if that's what you were actually saving, but the reality is it's going to be taken off you and then some in other areas. And the statement that you made also about years ago, like you said, when we started discussing this 2-3 years ago regularly and putting it out there, it would have been censored and it would have been flagged up as dangerous anti-scientific rhetoric, whereas now that is not the case. And I wanted to look at an article that you wrote, actually. That's not your article. This is your article. Ben is also a writer for the Daily Skeptic, and there'll be a link in the description box underneath this video for his Substack page and also for his X or Twitter page. If you use that, Climate Resistance, I encourage you to go and check it out. But this is a piece that you wrote just today was it published, or 26th?
A few days ago, yeah.
A couple of days ago. Well, it's fresh anyway, and it has to do with the COP30, and that's something that I've been discussing in relation to Ireland's presence there. But Miliband was over COP30, and I don't want to go into this in too much depth because I want to look at what Reeve said about the EVs. But COP30 is the biggest flop so far. So this COP thing is an annual event, and it used to be almost mandatory that delegations would be sent to be seen to be flying the flag for, climate action and so on and so forth. But this year it was crazy in that the four arguably biggest polluters in the planet, in the shape and form of India, China, Russia, and America, I believe, they weren't even there. It was held in the Amazon, and they had to cut a swathe of track, build a 4-lane highway in there to accommodate the 50,000 delegates that were flying in and out and polluting the atmosphere. And also, I think the building burnt down at the end of it. Was that right? Was there something symbolic in that, or what?
I think it was just, all hot air set fire to something. And I mean, never has a fire in the Amazon been so welcome. I mean, it was... It was great fire, Donald Trump might say. It was a wonderful fire.
A wonderful fire. Best fire I've ever seen.
Beautiful fire.
Beautiful fire. It was so beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know much about it. It wasn't me. I was here.
No,
I
were
didn't
here.
go.
Wasn't me
I'm never invited, and I probably wouldn't be allowed. But I cheered it on. No one was hurt, so that was double plus good. But what they were doing there, what I'm arguing in that piece is that the most important thing is the process. That's what needs to be. That's what the deals are about. And what I found really interesting is that in 2009, which is half of the COP meetings ago, because there's been 30, so that was 15 years ago, because we've skipped one because of the lockdowns. Ed Miliband was credited with saving the process, although I think he was probably sidelined. I think this is people blowing smoke up him. But he was credited for suggesting that the meeting defer its agreement, and that saved the process. But a lot of people were moaning that it didn't come up with what's called a roadmap, which is how we're going to cut emissions. Which is exactly the same criticism that's been made of COP30. So half the COPs there has been. I mean, it's essentially it was dead from 2009 onwards. But if you keep the process alive, then there's always the possibility that it's going to return, and it means countries mostly in Europe, the UK and Ireland in particular, what they need to sort of justify it to their own populations essentially is the continuation of the process. As long as there is still this process hanging on by a thread, someone like Ed Miliband can claim that there is this international process. We have these obligations under, the Paris Agreement, which was made at one of these conferences, and he can hang everything on there, and then claim that Britain will be leading the world in this stuff. I mean, it's quite remarkable, and I think it's very interesting to compare Ireland and Britain. Britain has less than half the per capita GDP of Ireland, and Great Britain, that is, and yet Ed Miliband is sort of convinced that the harm he's going to continue to do to push Britain's economic situation even further down the ranks, if you believe in ranks, or if you just believe in the absolute numbers, we're making ourselves poorer and poorer and poorer. And it's really hitting a crunch point here. I don't know how it's playing out on the island of Ireland, but in Britain we're really starting to test things now, which we've been warning about for 10, 15, 20 years now. And those warnings, those predictions about what the consequences are going to be are coming true. They've lost control of energy prices. Ed Miliband thinks he's a world leader. He thinks this country, which is 30th or 40th in these economic ranks by per capita income, which is losing its industrial strength, it's losing its capacities to govern. He thinks that countries like the four you mentioned, Russia, China, America, and India, and others, are going to look to him for moral guidance and
Yeah.
economic and industrial policy. And so it's fancy, and a lot of European countries are doing the same. And I think it's sad to see Europe, most of Europe, falling in this way, because this is where a lot of industries were kind of created.
See,
Yeah,
you mentioned falling there. In terms of economically as well as socially, you look
yeah,
at the powerhouse of Europe economically and industrially, Germany, for a very, very long time. It's effectively had its insides ripped out when it comes to its productivity and its industry, everything else. Any country that has embraced, this is a fact, this is whether you believe in the science or you discredit the science or not, but any country that has went hard towards the Green New Deals and the pushing for net zero targets to be met, are floundering behind the like of China, who have been nothing but going hand over fist to build humongous coal-fired power stations. And in fact, you mentioned about wind farms and wind turbines and whatnot. I remember, focusing in on Australia years ago. One of the senators in the Australian Senate, Senator Malcolm Roberts, who knew his onions when it came to this sort of thing. He said, "Look, we're sitting on so much uranium here. We're sitting on so much. We've got the best coking coal in the world. We're exporting the coking coal to China, who are building the wind turbines and selling them back to us at a profit. So ultimately, who's coming out of that transaction better off? It's the people that are pretty much parking this thing to the side. So I think Miliband, just before we move off him, because I want to talk about, I don't particularly want to move off him to talk about Rachel Reeves, but he must see, I think when you mentioned about his appearance, you mentioned about he looks a little bit different, a little bit AI. Could it be, Ben, that, he's under no illusion either, that I believe that he believes too, that the wheels are coming off this cart?
Oh, so are you suggesting either that he's sort of an agent of a foreign
No,
power,
what I'm
or
suggesting is
sort of,
he's saying stuff to the camera, and he's been spotted in with a ukulele singing songs, trying to make it hip and cool, and trying to get this into the minds
yeah,
of the young generation. But now, when you look at him from, say, the last time we spoke 12 months ago, he's got that sort of hollow expression. He's got the bug eyes. He's got a little element of, I wouldn't say panic about him, but I think he's finding it harder to parrot this message to the world when he genuinely doesn't believe in it himself.
I don't know what he believes. I count self-deception as bad faith, because he knows that there are people who disagree with him.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be grubby little bloggers like me on little YouTube channels like yours, or you're quite big, if I don't mean to be.
Yeah, excuse me.
Or
Spent a long time building this up from being nothing to being just something a bit more than nothing.
Yeah, so apologies, but he knows that this criticism is out there, but he just refuses to engage with it. And indeed, his 300, his claim, his promise that they were going to reduce energy bills by £300 a year, was just given to him by one of these green blob organizations. He didn't look at it. He didn't care before he reproduced it as his campaigning literature, and he hasn't listened to the criticism, and he's still lying. And you read, he's saying he's reduced bills. He hasn't. He's just moved bill from one bill to another. He's still doing all that. So I think he's still trying to deceive people, quite willfully, whether he believes in the broader agenda's ability to deliver these lower bills or not. And I mean, just to put this into context, because you mentioned China there, and I know we're going to talk about EVs, but a lot of the criticism of China was that it was doing something unfair by, for example, subsidizing its auto manufacturers and battery manufacturers and giving them an edge over European and other manufacturers. But that's not quite the truth. And I've had a look at it, and I've heard what the sort of more conservative aligned Western American and British think tanks, and actually the amount that they subsidize the EV and battery sector is equivalent to about $10 US dollars per person in China. Now, of course, China is quite a large country, so that amounts to quite a lot of money. But then if you look at how much we're paying by way of subsidies to energy generators and EVs, it's orders of magnitude larger. So, for example, we're paying just that £150. That's only a fraction of it, but that's already 15 times larger than the £10, and that's going to developers of wind farms who are buying wind turbines from China. So we're effectively subsidizing Chinese manufacturers through purchasing. Right, that's rather than producing as a China. So we're already 15 times more generous than the Chinese government. With EVs, it's even more ridiculous. Like, I don't have the figures at the top of my head, but they're astronomical. If you wanted to buy, top of the range EV through a salary sacrifice scheme, which is subsidized by the Treasury effectively, it's equivalent to thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds worth of subsidy. You could then get to town. You could every day, if you lived in some posh part of orbiting London, you could get into London without paying the congestion charge. You got VAT free power for charging, and so on and so forth. It was these enormous subsidies. So the biggest grantors to Chinese manufacturing, which, and we haven't even counted the fact that the distortion in energy prices disincentivized production in Britain and in Europe. The greatest, the biggest friend of Chinese manufacturing was the British government, and that's just an astonishing. I think maybe if he's lost any sleep, or maybe he looks like he's on drugs now.
Yeah.
He looks like he's been on the speed or something.
Yeah.
It's because he's wrestling with some very deep problems that he's helped to create. And,
exactly.
And I to be honest with you, I hope he can't sleep.
Yeah, with him, without like any of these people. Listen, the chickens always come home to roost in the end. And I want to flip across from him, and I want to look at this business that Reeves came out with yesterday to do with EVs. And of course, they're part of the parcel that were put forth and aggressively promoted over the last few years. Look, if you buy one of these, it's going to be cleaner, it's going to be greener, it's going to be more cost effective for you. You won't pay road tax on it. It's the way forward, it's the future. But the bubble has burst. This is a fact with many EV drivers, just in general. And again, from memory in our discussions, the price of insurance has gone through the roof. Road tax has been brought in. The range anxiety, charging anxiety, the lack of investment in infrastructure to support a supposedly ever-growing fleet of EVs, of which the purchase of which was also heavily, heavily subsidized to many, many companies to do that. On and on and on it goes. So people with, I suppose you could say, with the right mind and with a good heart, thought, okay, I'll give this a try. It's being positioned as this, but now that they have one, it's morphed into something else completely. So let's hear what Rachel had to say yesterday, just specifically about the EVs and what it could mean for drivers of EVs going forward.
Cars contribute to the wear and tear on our roads.
1 second.
I will ensure that drivers are taxed.
Get rid of her, put her back on.
And not all cars contribute to the wear and tear on our roads. I will ensure that drivers are taxed according to how much they drive, and not just by the type of car they own. By introducing the electric vehicle excise duty on electric cars. This will be payable each year alongside vehicle excise duty at 3p per mile for electric cars and 1.5p for plug-in hybrids, helping us to double road maintenance funding in England over the course of this Parliament.
Wow, that's quite a hit. 3p a mile. So she's saying that they contribute towards the destruction of our roads, which is probably true because of the weight of those behemoths. Okay, they're heavy. They probably do cause more potholes than a normal car. But again, Ben, I'm sure you can remember when these were first positioned, it's like your road tax is zero. It's going to be cheaper to charge this up than it is to fill it full of petrol or diesel. With now the price of electricity the way that it is and the lack of infrastructure, now they're being hit with 3p a mile. The insurance has gone up. The depreciation on these vehicles is absolutely crazy, the amount that they dive in value after a year, 2 or 3 years of ownership. And if you damage the engine on it, good luck to you getting a new one. You wouldn't get much change out of about 20 to 30,000 quid. So yesterday, did Rachel really show her hand when it came to the long-term future for EVs? Before you answer that, this is just a tweet that I saw that was posted up, I think, this morning. Just simply the summary. They promised EVs meant no more road tax. Now Rachel wants to charge you by the mile. The so-called green transition is turning into another cash machine for the Treasury. You'll pay to work, pay to shop, pay to live. This isn't about emissions. This is about control. Sure, we were, and I'm not saying that, a lot of people have been saying this, but that's what we were saying. We've been saying from day one, this is dodgy. This is not what it seems. They want to be able literally to pull the plug from you to be able to drive on the roads, and the way they'll do it is by financial penalties.
Yeah, they wanted to tell, how say, the more politically engaged or certainly more wealthy parts of society, don't worry about the green agenda. We're not trying to get rid of you. We're not trying to push you off the roads. And meanwhile, they were pricing everyone else off the road. And so they were saying, "Oh, you can come on the road. You can come on the road for free, and we'll even pay 40% of the value of your car. And if you've got tonsillitis, you can even get it on disability benefit." I'm joking about tonsillitis, but there was one of the ways in which they sort of pushed this was through the personal independence scheme. I don't know the name of it, for people who are claim disability living allowance of some kind.
Mobility scheme.
And you know, people with tennis elbow were getting massively subsidized cars. And then of course you get better deals if you get an EV rather than a petrol car. So you know, if you're giving this stuff away, then people will say, yeah, I'll have an EV, that's fine. And a lot of people will having those as their second car. They've got a you know, their family car is a diesel or a petrol, and then they've got the EV as an extra. So where were we? Well,
to do with even what you've just said there as well, the demographic, and I'm not against EVs being on the roads. If people want to buy an EV, run an EV, they should, they can, they feel like it, then they should be allowed to do that. If you're commuting, you know, to the shops, or you're going from village to village, and you do 100 mile a week or 150 mile a week, it might be a good option for you to do it. Maybe you feel comfortable with it. The problem was, Ben, that there was this pressure being put on drivers of internal combustion engine vehicles, whether it be petrol or diesel, that right, by 2030, we're not going to sell you a new diesel car, a new petrol car. You must buy a new EV. You can still buy one in the secondhand market, and then by some other time down the line, you can wave goodbye to your diesel or your petrol car. And going full circle, and I'm not trying to boast here, but they'll have to pry the keys of my vehicle from my cold dead hands to try and get into one of these.
They'll just put the tax up. Yeah, I mean, they don't appeal to me. I mean, we were talking earlier about how nice it is to live near the amenities that you take for granted.
Yep.
Unless you're the sort of person who likes to live in the complete wilderness, the countryside. You know, most of my local journeys, I'll just sling my rucksack on and head to the supermarket. I don't need a weekly shop or anything. You know, I just need a few bits and bobs, and like to go for coffee or what have you. Pick up some tea bags and whatever. But you know, most of the drives I do are longer. They're down to London, they're down to see family or what have you. They're longer. I have no real need of a local runaround. So, but I mean, plenty of people do. But there was I think they've been trying to phase out the sales of petrol and diesel cars. So we've have this deadline that's been looming. Every year, they're only allowed to sell a certain number of petrol and diesel cars relative to EVs. So there's been this deadline coming closer and closer and closer.
Yeah.
People have been harassed off the road through clean air zones, in London, the ultra low emission zone, ULEZ, and a number of other cities. And then there's these LTNs that try to sort of harass people, and I mean, are very, very bad in places like Oxford, very restrict people's sort of journeys. So if you want to go, rather than going across the town, as you might need to go and look after your auntie or your grandma, you have to go out of the town all the way around the ring road and then back into the town. And there, of course, massive congestion problems on those main roads. And now then they've introduced congestion charging. So we've had all these assaults, and I think, and it's what it's all been trying to mask is the fact that the green agenda is just anti-car. It's anti-movement, essentially. It doesn't really like the idea of people being able to move freely around the place, because it's inconvenient to their sort of ideological ideas about how society should be organized. If you've got your own ideas about where you're going and what you want to do, then it sort of doesn't resonate with their sort of designs. They're being the one, you can go here, you can go there. You know, these are very, very weirdly controlling mentality. I think that's why a lot of people of that sort of bureaucratic, technocratic bent are drawn to green ideas, whether or not they really believe them. And nobody's ever really admitted to this, but now I think it's coming out quite clearly in this budget statement. We're just going to treat you special people who thought you were special like we treated all the others. You know, and I wouldn't even say, I wouldn't put a bet on it not happening to buses in the future as well. Like, because if you can, first they came for the diesel and petrol cars, then they've come for the EVs. Well, if you're going to ban those vehicles on the basis of their environmental harms, then you're going to have to ban buses too. As I've put it in the past, EVs are a bridging technology to not having a car. They want you to walk. They want you to cycle. They want you to be good little citizens. They want you to do as you're told. They want you to behave in the approved ways, through the approved routes. You don't need to go over here unless you're a special person. You don't need to travel intercity unless you get dispensation, or you need to sort of, you have to prove your need to the government. It's not the government's responsibility to enable those journeys. That's the way we're headed. I think that's the mentality.
You know, it's odd hearing you say that again, because that was always the phrase or catchphrase that you used that stuck most in my mind. But because we haven't actually spoke about this in particular for a year now, or spoke on a regular basis for maybe 2 years now, it slipped my mind. But as soon as you started to utter that, it came back to my mind, and I want to close it at that, because I think we've given people enough food for thought and enough information to see the way things are maybe going, the trajectory that we're on. But Ben, years and years ago, when this whole push was on for EV transition into EV ownership, his statement, which now looking back is definitely prophetic, was an EV is a bridge to owning no vehicle at all. You get rid of the petrol, you get rid of the diesel, you get them into the EVs, and then you charge them through the head for that, to the point people will hold their hands up and say, I can't take it anymore. Give me the bus. Give me the bus. I'm going to buy a bike. I'm going to walk everywhere. That's, I think, what it's moving towards. So I want to leave it at that for now, Ben. Please check out the description box underneath. There's a lot more in-depth articles. If this is the sort of thing you want to look into in more depth, if it's something you're only casually, interested in, or you say, hang on a minute, this is serious business, check out the description box. There'll be a link through to Ben's Substack page in particular. Support him on there. If you can, go and check out his work, and also on his Twitter or X page at Climb, CLIM 8 Resistance. So that's all I want to say for now, Ben. I do appreciate you hopping on again. I do appreciate your, in my opinion, expert input on this business. And for now, anyway, that is Ben Pyle. I am Rick Munn. This is No Risk, No Reward Media, and we are over and out.